Good day, everyone. My name is Aaron Dimas Anna McDonald, student ID 22049118, and I am a final year business studies student. In our group CA1 assignment, I was responsible for writing the introduction section of our report on Volkswagen's Dieselgate scandal. Before I get into my contribution, I want to briefly touch on what international business means to me after taking this course. International business is essentially about how companies operate across border, and that means navigating different regulatory systems, economic conditions, and cultural expectation all at once. It's not just about selling a product in another country, it's about understanding that what works ethically, legally, and culturally in one market might not work the same way in another. That is why ethics and corporate governance became so critical once a company started opening in multiple countries, and that's the foundation of my introduction section was built on. As for my part of the report, I started by giving some background on the company. So Volkswagen was founded in 1937, headquartered in Wolfsburg, Germany, and by 2014, it had grown into one of the biggest largest automakers in the world, generating around 250 billion euros in revenues and operating in over 150 countries. It also owns a huge portfolio of brands including Audi, Porsche, Skoda, Bentley, and Lamborghini. From there, I outlined the purpose of our report, which was to investigate the role of business ethics and the corporate governance in international business using Volkswagen 2015 Dieselgate emission scandal as our case study. I also defined our two key concepts. Business ethics refer to the moral principles that guide fair and honest conduct towards stakeholders, while corporate governance is the system of rules and processes that ensures transparency, accountability, and integrity within a company. The key insight I took away from writing this section is just how far reaching the consequences of one ethical failure can be in an international context. Volkswagen installed a defeat device software to cheat emission tests in the US, but the fallout wasn't contained to one country. It triggered billions of dollars in fines and massive loss of consumer trust and stricter emission regulation across multiple countries worldwide. This taught me that in international business, ethics governance aren't just internal compliance checklists. They are also a strategic necessities that directly affect a company's global survival. Reflecting on this assignment, there are three things I'm taking away from it. First, on the business side, I now understand that multinational companies constantly have to balance profit making with responsibility across different markets, and Volkswagen's failure show what happens when that balance breaks down. Second, this connects directly to my business studies degree. Understanding how global companies manage cross-border risk and maintain stakeholder trust is the core to everything I'm studying. And finally, for my career, this assignment helped me build practical skills like critical thinking, structuring a formal business report, and analyzing a real corporate case studies, all of which I know I'll need in any future international business role. That's my part of the presentation. Now I'll pass it to Ravina for the conceptual framework. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Ravina. This is my individual reflection for a group report on Volkswagen. To me, international business is really about understanding how firms operate profitably while navigating a world that doesn't share one set of rules. What stood out most to me in this course is just going global isn't just bigger version of doing business at home. It means confronting different legal system, cultural expectations, and institutional pressures all at once. A decision that perfectly acceptable in one market can be illegal and unethical or reputationally disastrous in another. That tension is exactly what I explored in my section of the report. My contribution to the group report was conceptual framework where I defined connected two ideas, business ethics and corporate governance. Business ethics I found is really about the moral standards and principles, integrity, fairness, and responsibility that guide a company's decisions beyond the minimum the law requires. Corporate governance, on the other hand, is the system of the procedures, board structures, accountability mechanism that are supposed to put those ethical principles into practice. The biggest insight I gain is that these two concepts have to work together. Ethics without governance is just good intention with no enforcement mechanism. Governance without ethics is just a compliance checklist that looks fine on paper but collapses under real pressure. Moving on, I also learned how much harder this become at a global scale. International managers constantly risk falling into two traps: cultural relativism, where they excuse harmful local practices just because they are how things done here, or ethical imperialism, where rigidly impose home country standards without regard for local context. On top of that, firms face what's called institutional dualism, trying to satisfy host country expectation and home country governance rules at the same time. The case that really made me click for me was Volkswagen emission scandal. Volkswagen didn't fail because nobody knew how defeat device software was strong. It failed because its governance system, it bought oversight, its internal controls were too weak to catch or stop the fraud. That's the lesson I keep coming back to. Structure enables or disables ethics. A company can say all things right about integrity and still fail catastrophically if there's no real independence or transparency behind it. Going forward, whether I end up in finance or marketing, I know I'll be working with organizations that operates across borders in some form, even indirectly through supply chains or clients. This course gave me a framework I will actually reuse whenever I evaluate a company or a decision. I now instinctively ask not just is it profitable, but is there a real governance behind this or just a policy on paper? That's a lens I don't think I would have developed without building this section of the report. And honestly, researching about Volkswagen case shifted how I think about corporate scandals in the news. I used to assume they came down to a few bad individuals. Now I see them as system failure, the product of weak oversight, not just weak morals. That's a more useful and slightly more sobering way to look at business. It also made me more critical of companies that talk a big game about ethics without showing any structural accountability to back it up. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Wong Pui, and today I will be presenting my reflections on my contributions to our CA1 group assignment for the international business subject. From my learning in this subject, I understand that international business is not simply about expanding a company into foreign market or increasing profits. It also involves operating across different countries with different culture, legal system, and ethical expectation. I have learned that multinational corporations need to make responsible business decisions while maintaining strong corporate governance and ethical standards. Overall, this subject has helped me understand that long-term business assets depends not only on financial performance but also on acting responsible towards stakeholders and society. For my contributions to the group assignment, I was responsible for ethical issue in international business operation, where I analyzed two key ethical issues faced by Volkswagen. The first issue was the Dieselgate scandal. Volkswagen's installed defeat device software in millions of the diesel vehicles to manipulate emission tests. Although the vehicle met legal standard during testing, they produced much higher emissions during normal driving. This reflects serious ethical misconduct, weak corporate governance, and poor management oversight. As a result, Volkswagen faced billions of dollars in fine, legal settlements, and significant damage to its reputation and consumer trust. The second issue I discussed was labor and human rights risks in Volkswagen global supply chain. Volkswagen relies on suppliers from different countries for raw materials used in electric vehicle batteries, such as cobalts and lithiums. However, complex multi-tier supply chains make it difficult to monitor suppliers effectively, increasing the risk of unethical labor practices and human rights violation. These challenges can affect the company's reputation, stakeholders' trust, and compliance with international regulation. Lastly, I examined the differences in ethical business practices across country and region. I learned that multinational corporations like Volkswagen face challenges because ethical standards and legal requirements differ from one country to another. Companies need to balance respecting local practices while maintaining consistent global ethical standards through effective corporate governance. Through completing this assignment, I gained many valuable insights. First, I realized that unethical decisions can have long term consequences that go beyond financial loss. They can damage the company's reputation, reduce stakeholder trust, and affect its global competitiveness. Second, I learned that strong corporate governance play an important role in preventing unethical behavior by promoting transparency, accountability, and responsible decision making. I also realized that managing a global supply chain is much more challenging than I initially thought. Multinational corporations are responsible not only for their own operations but also for ensuring that their suppliers follow ethical labor and environmental standards. Overall, this subject has strengthened my understanding of international business ethics and improved my critical thinking and analytical skill. As someone interested in pursuing a career in international business, I believe the knowledge gained from this subject will help me make ethical decisions, understand global business challenges, and contribute to suitable business practices in the future. Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Fu Jia Wei, and I will be talking about my coursework too. First, I'll talk about what I have learned from the international business subject. How companies operating across different economic, legal, and national environments is what I have learned from this international business subject. This requires the companies to manage different legal systems, consumers, and cultural norms in those countries. The company also has to look at factors such as political, economic, and legal before they want to expand into those countries. I have also learned about the measures that are done by companies when they want to expand into those countries. And they should use those which have less cost and have more communication channels to have more responsiveness from the consumers. I did the corporate governance framework for this coursework. This includes the company wants to achieve net carbon neutrality for its production facilities of its vehicles and also from its light commercial vehicles and passenger vehicles. The company also has inclusivity and diversity in the workplace for the employees. This means that the company has no discrimination from the aspect of the employees based on race and religion. The company also wants to fulfill legal, social, and environmental obligations in their supply chains. They do this by organizing their supplier locations from different countries. If my company were to expand into another country and I was given a project to know what is the feasibility of this, first, I will have to consider factors such as political, economic, and legal before expanding into those countries. This is due to the different regulations for starting a business in those countries. I will also have to know what are the consumer needs before my company can sell their products in those countries. I will also have to know what is the economic factor of that country. This is to know if the consumers will want to buy my company's products in those countries. I will have to look at all these factors when there are many countries for the expansion of the company. This will ensure that my company has continued operations in that country. I will now pass on to the next speaker. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Stuart Liu Xin Sheng, student ID 23138886. Today I will be presenting for my individual reflection. So the part which I was assigned to do was the case analysis for the CA1. So for the case analysis, I decided to do it about the Dieselgate scandal for Volkswagen. So in summary, this scandal was that Volkswagen installed a defeat device into their vehicles in order to bypass the emission test. So the defeat device will purposely lower the emission levels just to pass the test. And after the test, when the car is in normal operations, the carbon emission levels will shoot back up again. And they use this to market their vehicles as environmentally friendly and promoting their vehicles alongside the hybrid vehicles that also focus on sustainability and a clean environment. After a few years of this, an external study found out that Volkswagen cars actually emit more gas than allowed during the actual test when the car is on the road. And then, as the investigations went on, it was discovered that around 11 million cars that have been sold by Volkswagen globally were actually fitted with this defeat device. The main takeaway I got from this case study is how Volkswagen was able to adapt from this scandal. So the loss that they received from this scandal was a lot, as they have to try to restore public trust and also pay fines for customer compensation, and this took a huge hit to their finance. So for the long-term outcome, they decide to pivot to an actual sustainable framework and to be more EV focused, so they can emphasize on sustainability and also innovation, which is what Volkswagen is good at. And they also realign their core values to make sure that they are prioritizing in the environment and customer satisfaction as well. So this is how they adapted to the scandal, and I think they did a pretty good job as they're able to get the sales back up and are able to compete with market leaders such as BMW. My understanding on international business is that it is not just the company getting their product to other countries for selling. It's about the process of how they do that. So they have to go through a lot of planning. There's many different aspects to look at, such as pastel analysis and different legal compliances and getting the right corporate government framework, and to make sure that their standards and cultures is able to align with that of the other country, and that they can adapt to the culture of the other country, and they're able to make sure that the product is able to transition from one country to another without any problems. So for the course takeaways overall, I learned a lot about strategic planning here, as I got to learn more about how different cultural navigations from different companies, mainly MNCs, were enabled them to improve their product desirability and product distribution in another country. And also the importance of pastel analysis, which is the big analysis framework for MNCs and how to tackle the macro economy, about mainly about the government and the broader picture, and not just about sales and marketing and all that. So this overall broadened my own view on how different areas of the macroeconomy can also be covered by pastel, and how greatly it can impact a business decision making. That's all from me. Thank you very much.
Hello, I'm Amrita Varshini, and for our CA1 coursework, I was responsible for the recommendation and the conclusion of the Volkswagen case study. So before I present my recommendations, I'd like to briefly share my understanding of international business and what I've learned from it. So, to me, international business is all about how companies operate and compete in the global marketplace. So, it's not just about expanding to a different country, but it's also about understanding the differences between them, such as culture, rules and regulations, economic conditions, and also the business practices there. So, I also learned that businesses need to balance having a good global strategy while adapting to the local markets in order to succeed. So, for example, if Zeus wanted to expand to a different country, it couldn't simply just use the same strategy as it uses here in Malaysia. So instead, it would first need to understand the local customers, the cultures, the rules and regulation, and also the competition before entering the market. So this shows like businesses need to adapt the strategies to suit each other country. Based on the issues identified in CA1, I proposed three key recommendations to improve the operationals of Volkswagen. So, firstly, Volkswagen should introduce an independent global whistleblower app managed by an external third party. So, since Volkswagen operates through multiple countries, it can be quite challenging for headquarters to monitor every subsidiary effectively. And this system also would allow employees to report unethical practices directly without going through local management. And this will also reduce fear of retaliation and improve transparency across global operations. Secondly, Volkswagen should also implement an ESG linked executive compensational matrix. Currently focusing heavily on sales targets may also encourage managers to prioritize like short-term performances and gains over ethical practices. So by linking executive rewards to environmental, social, and also performances, managers will be encouraged to make responsible decisions that support long-term success rather than short-term gains. And lastly, Volkswagen should establish a uniform transnational sustainability rule across all facilities and ventures. So this ensures that all the same environment standards are applied globally, preventing subsidiaries from taking advantage of weaker regulations in certain countries. So it will also reduce greenwashing risk and strengthen Volkswagen's global reputation. Throughout coursework 1, I learned how to analyze a real international business issue and develop like proper practical recommendations. So this case showed me the importance of strong corporate governance, ethical leadership, and also risk management in multinational companies. It also allowed me to apply international business concept to a real world case and think about the practical solutions. So, how this course prepared me for my future career growth is that this subject has given me a better understanding of what businesses need to consider before expanding internationally. So, since my family is involved in business, it has changed the way I think about expansion opportunities. So now I understand that successful international growth it requires a lot of careful planning, a lot of market research, and also proper strategic decision making. And I do believe these skills will help me make me more informed business decisions in the future. Thank you.